Hey, I am here for another year. Welcome to 2025. And with me, I have Emma Shermer Tamir, and she runs Marketing by Emma, which is a great consulting firm, agency in the world of content, branding, go to market, a real thought leader in the e commerce space. And Emma, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be kicking off 2025 with you.
I know we tried to get you on earlier, but hey, during the hectic shopping season, I guess you were a little bit busy. What's going on in the world of e-commerce? I haven't talked to a person in your type of role in a while, and I know lots of things are moving and shaking, but give me a kind of a level set of where we are.
Wow, things are really bananas in the e-commerce world. I think like a lot of the business world in general, but things are extra topsy-turvy. I know a lot of people that went through probably a something equivalent to a panic attack with the TikTok looming ban that lasted for less than 24 hours over the weekend and is still in a big question mark now as we progress into a new presidency. So that's obviously affecting a lot of different kinds of businesses, but it has a massive impact on the e-commerce world just with the way that it's able to generate sales and traffic and attention for brands of all sizes. We also have Amazon that's been playing all sorts of wild and crazy games with saying that they're not increasing fees, but then they are changing the way that they do reimbursements and making it increasingly more difficult for brands to eke out any kind of reasonable, survivable profit margins. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, and that's not even getting into the way that AI is creating this
Yes.
glut of content and overwhelming everybody and making it increasingly more difficult for brands to be able to stand out and connect with the customers that they need. So, despite the fact that we are only just at the beginning of the year, things already feel like they have been off to a rigorous clip.
You are being too kind with that assessment, but you're absolutely correct. I like the word bananas. I thought that was a very descriptive. If you think about going from TikTok to Amazon to AI, it is a 1, 2, 3 punch that would knock out a lot of people. How is the world adjusting to AI and recognizing all the power of it with all the threat that it presents?
Yeah, it's well, and to I think there are two big lessons with a lot of what's going on. One being diversification, which is that if you are relying solely on one channel for driving your business, then you are in a very vulnerable position. And it's really all the people that were looking at their livelihood evaporating with the potential closing of TikTok. I hope that that's a wake up call also for people that weren't in that position, that they really need to be thinking about making sure that you are not just focusing exclusively on growing on Amazon or growing on TikTok or growing on Instagram, but really what is a more comprehensive strategy. And so, and immediately, if you're thinking about that, probably your mind starts to go to AI as one of the primary tools to be able to do that in any kind of effective way. Because obviously, managing multiple channels and managing a more diversified strategy adds a much higher degree of complexity to everything you're doing. And so the temptation is, well, let's just figure out how to use AI to start churning out lots and lots of content. And unfortunately, that is a really big mistake that I see companies making all the time in all sorts of sectors, not just the e commerce world. If you spend any amount of time on LinkedIn, for example, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about, which is that yes, AI allows you to create a lot, but it doesn't necessarily allow you to create quality content that's going to drive the kind of engagement that you really need in order to be able to attract the right customers or clients or attention for whatever it is that you have. And so that's where, with all of this craziness going on and with all of these tools and abilities to use AI to our advantage, it's really worth actually taking a step back and allowing AI to give us space and time to actually do what we do best as humans, which is to be able to think creatively and strategically beyond what the AI can really give us. And so, rather than just going after that low hanging fruit, thinking about who we want to be as brands, how we want to show up, what makes us unique and different, and gives people that are looking for what we offer a compelling reason to want to choose us over all of our competitors. That's where we really need to be spending more time. So rather than just chasing after all of these hacks and tactics, all of this craziness is actually a signal that it's worth investing some time into going back to the fundamentals and making sure that you've carved out a really strong, clear perspective that you can lean into so that you're able to connect with your target customers. You're able to drive the growth and those relationships, even with all of the craziness going on, you're able to really strengthen those relationships and continue to drive meaningful growth in your
Yeah.
business.
I wanna jump on that too, and I can't agree with you more. I wish I could disagree with you, but you made a really strong case. Plus, it's my talk track, which is, you're talking about branding and differentiation, which I strongly believe in, and think it's the hallmark or, the of really any great brand is the ability to immediately differentiate why it's preferred over the others, over the competitive brands. And we see it all the time in the marketplace. But I also feel like in my content as I take my message out that if it's not written for me, the consumer, and addressing my needs, it's part of a sea of other information, data, messages that are out there that I'm not going to click on. I'm not going to engage unless if I feel like this is written and personalized to my needs.
Yes. Well, and you bring out a great point, which is that we can sometimes get lost in thinking about branding as something that's isolated and something that is separate from the customer. But actually, I really like to think about branding as part of a dialogue, and the customer is a part of that. So it's not something that should be removed and thought of in a silo somewhere, but it's really something that's going to be interacting with and then being informed by the customers, because the fact of the matter is that whenever we launch something into the world, we might have great clarity about what we think is going to be important to our customers and who we think our customers are. And so often what we see as that is that those assumptions may not be 100% with what the data is actually showing us. And so it's important to make sure that we're really clear about who we're selling to and framing everything in order to be able to really connect with them. So we know who we are, but how do we communicate that in a way that is going to resonate with our customers? And if you don't get that right, then you could have the most beautiful logo, you could have the most inspiring mission, and the most incredible service or product to offer. But if you don't have a way of being able to communicate that in a way that is going to speak to the customer's needs, fears, desires, then none of that matters.
Emma, we talked about it a little bit from the standpoint too of a lot of brands with their products that go out there and they're in a single channel. Hey, I got my widget and it's kicking butt on Amazon, and all of a sudden, ouch, Amazon's taking more money, or ouch, Amazon's slowing down. they start to think, okay, we need to broaden our strategy and go to multi-channel, go to different sellers. Do something with Shopify or do something with Instagram or do something with TikTok. A million examples, right? How do you help them make that choice? What's the workflow there?
So part of it is going back to that question of customers. So your customers can help make that decision so much easier for you because if you know who you're selling to, then you also understand where your customers are spending time and shopping and where you should be. So if you are selling to a customer who is a somebody primarily that lives in more rural areas, let's say women who are in their 50s, then Facebook might be a really great channel for you. Walmart could also be a really good channel for you. Whereas if you are selling to a younger generation, then you have to be on TikTok. And so some of those decisions, obviously it's not a binary, either this or the other, but understanding who your customers are, where they like to shop and where they like to spend their time is really the key in beginning to evaluate where you want to be showing up and selling your offer to them.
Good. Can you think of an example, Emma, in all your work where you've helped a company walk through this?
So we have worked with a lot of companies that are looking that have really gotten their start either offline or on Amazon and are realizing that Amazon is no longer enough, or obviously if they are coming from just a retail background, then they're recognizing that they need to be on e-commerce. And so one of the things that we are thinking about in either of those situations is making sure that when we are helping these brands establish themselves on each of these different channels, that we are maintaining and preserving that core brand identity and how they are presenting themselves on all of these different channels, not simply copy and pasting all of the content from one to the next, because each one has its own set of standards and best practices that you want to be mindful of. But similarly, you don't want to have a bunch of disjointed content and information that's going to give a confused impression of who that company is. That can actually have a really negative event, pardon me, a really negative effect where customers may start to wonder whether you are, in fact, a reliable, trustworthy brand because you're showing up as one way on TikTok and another way on Walmart and a third way on Shopify. And it's sort of like, wait, are they just trying to uh, shape shift to each of these platforms to manipulate these different kinds of customers, or are they really standing true to who they say they are? And so it all starts with making sure that we have a really clearly detailed brand profile and customer profile and brand voice, and understanding how we want to communicate that across all of those platforms so that as they're getting set up on Shopify, as they're getting set up on Walmart, as they're beginning to dip their toes, maybe even into doing their own content creation on platforms from YouTube to TikTok to Instagram to you name it, that they know how they need to present themselves in a way that's going to really ring true to who they are and resonate with their customers.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So if I'm a company that's is moving out there and I'm trying to really dial in my brand, my differentiation, and I'm trying to figure out the right next steps, it's really listening to the customer first and foremost.
Yes. Yeah, if you have not ever created a customer avatar, which is essentially a profile, a very detailed profile of who your target customer is,
Yeah.
then I want you to pause this conversation right now or add it on to your to-do list to do that immediately afterwards, because that is such an important tool that really everyone on your team can use to do a better job, because that customer avatar can be used by your customer service team to be able to more clearly understand who it is that they're engaging with, to communicate in a way that's going to be reassuring to them, or to meet them and help solve those problems in a way that's going to yield to the best outcome possible. And it's going to be helpful for anybody that's strategizing new launches to know what's going to really excite and delight that customer. So every single part of your business can be positively impacted by having more clarity around who that customer is. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see businesses making with this step is being fearful of getting really specific, because they have this perception that if you narrow it down to a more precise group of people, that you are going to be missing out on opportunities. And in fact, it's really the opposite, that by having that clarity, you are able to separate yourself out and give those target customers a stronger reason to want to buy from you, because they understand that your brand is really made for them.
Yeah, that is true. And if you're launching a brand today, Emma, what kind of cheat sheet do you say? Do you start with the avatar, or do you start with testing? How do you go about that with a company going step one?
Step 1, I guess I always hesitate from saying absolutely 100% of the time you need to follow this, because there can be lots of different journeys that brands take to get to the point of launching. But at some point, even if it's going to be wrong, you need to decide on who you think you're going to sell to. If that even can mean going and spending time on social media where you think those customers are and collecting some data about them. One of the cool things about AI is that you can also even do a little bit of a launch without having a physical good that you're launching yet, just to begin to test concepts and to see how people are going to respond. You can do a completely imagined product that hasn't even been manufactured yet, and create images and video about that, and to see how people engage with it. So you definitely need to have an idea of who you believe your customer to be, even if once you go live, that, as we spoke about earlier, that customer may end up being different. You also need to have a full brand profile that is all of that information that you have about your customers. You also want to have about your own brand, so that people understand how to embody it as they're creating your design and putting together your website, and really bringing your brand to life. And those two things are must-haves. Whether you do one or the other first doesn't necessarily matter as much. And then all the steps after that are going to be largely dependent upon what it is that you're selling, be it a product or a service, and then the kind of product. And obviously, there's going to be a lot of different nuance there.
Yeah. Emma, a couple more questions, and I know I'm taking a lot of your time. When you think about Shopify, where do they come into the pecking order of must do?
So, Shopify is essentially a platform that is really geared towards e-commerce, but you don't have to have an e-commerce brand in order to be using Shopify for your website. For example, we actually host our website on Shopify, even though we are selling a service and not products. So Shopify, you want to, I always advise customers that even if it's just a one page website, you should have a website if you are going to be selling something online. It gives legitimacy. It helps customers get to know a little bit about you. It reassures them that you're a legitimate, real brand and not just some random fly by night company on Amazon or Temu or what have you. So it, my recommendation would be that if you are getting into e-commerce and even if you are just putting up a singular page website, that you start building that on Shopify for a variety of reasons. One being that it's it's really just set up so splendidly for managing an e-commerce business, but they also have a lot of really cool integrations with other channels that are super exciting. For example, they have a partnership with YouTube, which allows you to be able to uh, put your plug in your store with the YouTube app, and then on your own YouTube channel you can have your products listed, but you can also make your products available to influencers who can then link to your products directly within their YouTube videos, so really reducing that friction of having to send people out of YouTube, which is good, obviously, both for YouTube to keep people on the site longer, but also anytime that you can reduce friction between interest in buying and making that purchase, the higher likelihood of being able to make that conversion. So that's really awesome. Shopify and Buy with Prime, which is an Amazon program, is also pretty cool integration. So if managing all of the fulfillment side of your business and the shipping and all of that is too complex, especially for the size of business you are, then you can get all of the FBA Prime services, but through selling on your own Shopify website. So it, because of how it's set up and also the different partnerships that it has, I personally think that Shopify is really the platform to choose when you are setting up an e-commerce business
Okay.
and building out your website.
Very cool. Let me ask you one final question. I'm intrigued by all of these, maybe I'm being kind calling them challenger brands that pop up as I'm scrolling. A lot of them are, fly by the seat of their pants trying to sell something to you. Sometimes it's a service, sometimes it's a product. It seems like it's catching on though, because whatever I'm scrolling called Instagram or something, right? I'm being flooded by these offers. Are these e-commerce? Do you like these kinds of channels, if that's the right word, or these ad units for your brands?
Yes, having the ability to have highly targeted content. Like, I imagine, well, first of all, whatever brands you're seeing when you scroll Instagram, I promise you are totally different brands than what I'm seeing when I scroll Instagram. And most people would agree that they really like that. That okay, we hear complaints about the fact that oh, they're spying on me, they're listening to me, but at the same time, we would much rather be served ads for brands that are relevant to us, where we get the opportunity to be like, wow, I didn't even know that existed, or I've always been buying this because that was the only option that I knew of. But the fact that I can find this other brand that's actually seems to be designed to meet my needs more specifically, like absolutely I'm excited to give them my money. And so I think that's one side of it, and the other side is that you mentioned challenger brands, and I think what you mean by that, if I'm not mistaken, is we have all of these established legacy brands that we're all familiar with. Many of them we buy just because that's just what's been available to us. And so when you're trying to be an up and coming brand that is competing against a well saturated legacy brand like that, you can't play the same game. You can't just try to be them and hope that you're going to win. And so, by offering something that is counter to those brands, that's where you're actually able to get that traction. So that's what we see with a company like Liquid Death or Dude Wipes or some of these other uh, brands that are edgy in their marketing and are speaking to a very specific customer segment and are doing things completely counter to what conventional marketing wisdom said you should do just even a few years ago.
Yeah, and, Emma, I think we are getting some different, brands in our feeds.
I would hope so.
You know what? It's funny how fast a half hour goes in a chat with you. My goodness, lots of good insights, and I love the e-commerce space. I think it is so interesting how we progressed from, Internet 1.0 e-commerce to today. Everything is driven by e-commerce now and sales. And I know still retail exists as a major shopping channel, but the world of internet-based selling is just flipped. And we didn't even get into, a lot of the other micro or macro trends, whether it's the influence of other economies and selling it internationally and sourcing products you would never have access to, just a million other topics, right? So let's try to do this again soon, shall we?
I would love that. That sounds wonderful.
Any final thoughts or words you want to share about building an e-commerce brand or e-commerce business?
Yeah, I mentioned the importance of customer avatars, and there may be people that are listening who say, "Oh, I have one of those. I made it a few years ago." And if that's you, then I would really encourage you to go back and to create a new one and to make sure that you are making listening to your customers a key part of your business planning and strategizing plan, because the fact is that customers are dynamic, and what they care about and what they're thinking about and how they're making decisions, those are changing just like we as people are changing. And so this isn't none of these things, be it your brand identity or your customer avatar or how you're positioning yourself, it's not static. And so these are all things that we want to be constantly actively engaging with on a regular basis to make sure that we are primed to be able to take advantage of new opportunities, that we can be responsive to changes and be able to redirect and re-strategize quickly, and that we're able to continue to be on that positive growth trajectory moving into the future.
Emma, that is a fantastic take. Sorry for hesitating there. You nailed it though. This is great. I really appreciate your time, and I'm going to take you up on that offer. Let's do it again soon.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. And by the way, I do have a YouTube channel. So if you are interested in diving deeper into any of these topics, I'd love for you to check it out and join me and subscribe, and we can all be learning about and
Sharing,
interpreting.
learning, moving forward, evolving as a species, all that good.
Yes,
Have a
exactly.
wonderful stuff.
Exactly. Thank you so much for hosting me.